All right, all right. Welcome to another edition of Grown Folks Business on a Thursday evening. I think the worst of the storm is behind us locally, and that's kind of what we're going to be talking about. No pun intended. Local weather, local things, to a degree. That's what the topic is tonight. Affected but not connected. The pros and cons of the national news cycle. So I think it's getting to a point of being well understood that we are becoming more inundated with what's happening throughout the country than we had been in previous years. And I can't tell you exactly when that became a thing, but I know it is a thing now because uh, when I was coming up, and I don't think it's been too terribly long ago, we were more concerned with what is happening locally in our communities and uh, what we could be impacted by in a more proximity that was more in proximity to us. And then you would have, as we still do to a degree, the national news comes on after, and you will find out more about what's going on around the world. But just as in general, this conversation will be about um, news, kind of how sensationalized it has become, um, how disjointed it seemingly has made us, how polarizing it has made us, or polarized it has made us. Um, we have entities that are, in my opinion, no longer tasked with or held to task as far as informing the citizenry. It's more about that attention grabbing headline or that, I think we talked about this maybe when we first started doing Grown Folks Business, that breaking news that just blazes across the screen, or, no spin, trusted source, all that type stuff. It just is like, I don't know. Uh, just tell me what's happening, um, and tell it as a truth as opposed to trying to subscribe to some angle. And you think about, the most recent of things, this whole January 6th investigation that's taking place. And you have, if I'm not mistaken, the most popular news channel in Fox News not even uh, making it their top priority to talk about it, to show what's happening as the investigation is unfolding. That's wild. That's wild to me. But where are people going for their news now? We got 24-hour news channels. The local fare, I don't know if it's adequate by any measure to cover what should be of significant interest to the people um, that are in the local communities, let alone uh, being selective with what they choose to highlight nationally. It's a kind of a tricky situation. I'm someone with a media studies degree, and I paid attention to a lot of things where media is concerned. So it's just something that was on my mind, and got two great minds here to share this thought, share these thoughts, and to process them with. Lisa, thanks for joining as always. Bob, glad to see you back here in the space. Danya, you get your props for doing what you do. And as I stated, we had a bad storm. Didn't know if we'd make it on tonight, but we're here. Um, I have a clip that I'm going to play shortly, but before I do, and just to, let some air out of it, it's not anything uh, magnanimous or transforming or whatever. It's just an old broadcast that I think will give some context to what I'm planning to try to unpack in this conversation we're about to have. But I'll begin with a couple of questions. You can answer both at the same time, or you can answer them separately, and how we end up doing it is fine with me. But I'll start with you, Lisa. Um, what is news to you, and what isn't news to you? And that's based on what you see being communicated as news. So does that make sense? Like, what do you, when you tune in to local stuff, or even you can definitely talk about the two, what do you consider news or newsworthy, and what don't you consider news or newsworthy?
Oh man, that's a great question. Now, for me, because of what I'm trying to do in the community, I do watch a lot of national as well as local happenings to see what successes and what failures. Um, so I think any information that's pertinent to our standards of living, our quality of life, is newsworthy because everyone may not be privy to or have access to someone who has a good grasp on what that interest rate hike meant. So if they don't, I didn't read about it because that's not news to me. I didn't have to read the whole all everybody's spin on it and everybody's take on it because I have a better I have um, a grasp on the trickle down effects of those things already. So I don't have to read those things. But it is news to someone who is not as sophisticated in participating in those spaces already, is that if that makes sense. So some things I don't have to get as intimately involved in because I already have pieces of it lined up. Whereas it is big news for someone who does not have that.
So you find it useful, but you inform yourself in the way that makes sense for what you're trying to do in the community. And when you brought up community, that was a big piece of what I feel um, local news is far more responsible for uh, making sure that we are informed about what's happening in our community, and that is a place that I think that they could do better. Um, and I mean in
Can
terms
you
of elections. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
can I give you an example?
Yes. Yes.
So when I was listening to the NPR story of the current statistics, and I think I heard this Friday, that the national average or local average, regional average of the price of gas was $4.90 a gallon, right? And I know people who are severely impacted by commodities may not be able to fully figure out how to navigate things that they have to have. So what I did is I took that bit of information I got from NPR and I did my tea time tip for today. And I addressed it and I said, if and I said it makes a difference, but if you get Medicaid and every visit you do that Medicaid pays for, whether it's eye doctors, dentists, or a physical, call your worker today and tell them you want to participate in the transportation, and it doesn't cost you anything. It's not that much labor, not that much more labor intensive, but they will pay for every visit. So you get a gas voucher. So I took that bit of information as a way to help positively impact the communities that are most impacted from the variances in the commodities, if that makes sense.
No. So again, now that was better with what you had mentioned before. This is a wonderful example of how you take from somewhere that something that could be meaningful to the people that you try to help in the community, and that's wonderful. Um, where I was going with what I was saying, somewhat is in that realm. Not saying the local news doesn't do a good job of communicating what's going on and being helpful to the community. I'm just saying, being that what I'm participating in at this moment, running for public office, I feel that a lot more attention should be given to what's happening um, locally from a political standpoint, so that people know who their options really are and all of that good stuff. Um, I think that is something that should be more on the radar of local news and things of that nature. I feel like there should be some real energy behind some public uh, square conversations, if that makes sense. Um, Bob, what's news to you and what's not news to you?
That's an interesting question, and a very good question, because I think that in our culture, we've really lost clarity around that question. I think that we are so oriented around feeding people what grabs their attention that we've really blurred the lines between telling to people and really journalism and news and that sort of thing. The other thing, it seems to me, with all the news channels, with all the news outlets, then with social media and all the versions of social media, we're just pummeled with stuff. And I find even with all that pummeling, it can be hard to find really good information or to distill what within that really is news, what's accurate, an accurate telling of that news, because you listen to 4 different stations and you get 4 different versions. And so it's and if you listen to news commentators, they all seem to have their little angle. They all seem to have their little they're speaking to a customer with a bias. They're not just expressing the facts of what's occurred and whatnot. To your earlier comment about, I don't want to be the guy that's like, oh, back in the good old days we did it this way. That's the last thing I want to be. But to your point, we had morning local news. We had, and you turn it on every morning, your local station. You got school closings. You got stuff that matters to you about your day, that matters to you about what's going on in your community. You had evening 30 minutes of local news. Then you had an hour of national news, and it was organized. It was segmented based upon large topic areas, and so you could pay attention to what you wanted to pay attention to. And during the course of the day, you didn't get anything. You get the newspaper and you'd read the newspaper because the newspaper was pretty comprehensive. You had your local sections and your national sections and your world sections and your financial sections. But during the day, if a president got shot, if a war was declared, if something like that, you'd get we interrupt this programming to bring you this special news alert. That's the only time you would get stuff, during the day. And yet it seems like we were better and more appropriately informed during those times. And I really don't know much more to say about that. The thing is, we're pencil whipped with local news from around the world. We don't get enough of our own local news. We don't have a reliable source to be on top of, like we've talked about this as it relates to the campaigns here in Guilford County and Greensboro. We don't get enough where we can actually know we can go here and we can get this and we can analyze and we can make decisions around it.
My point exactly. I feel like our election is not so big, and we're just talking really quickly about the local politics, that you can't go talk to everyone. I mean, literally, go sit down and have an evening of 5-minute incremental breakdowns of each candidate so that they, are understood on a more broad base locally. I feel like that's a failure to a degree. I'm sorry for cutting you off, though.
No, I think that's exactly right. And you've got to find your source, and it's going to be a source. The question is it going to be an objective source, or is it going to be doctored up and spun in such a way in order to accomplish the mission of appealing to certain people and appealing to your attention goals, not your educational goals?
Indeed. The follow-up to that question is just point blank. Who do you trust, or who do we trust, right? I'll begin in some way of saying that I recall also, and I thought about this when I was putting the show together, Bob. I'm not the person that want to say the walk to school was, 20 miles in knee deep snow. But I want to make it understood, and you said made a whole lot of wonderful points. There, less is more, is what I think is the bottom line in this discussion, right? So if there's less, I think, to choose from, but it's quality and the presentation and what's highlighted and how it's communicated, then I'm more trusting of the few than the many. And I think it's, oof. I mean, I'm going to get to the internet stuff, so I'm trying to stay away from that because that's another question. So it's hard to have that one person that I think we had more access to during a period of time. And I, talk about Walter Cronkite or Ted Koppel or Dan Rather, some of the guys that we understood to be Tom Brokaw, guys we understood to be, kind of stiff and just delivering the news, delivering the facts. That's all they were doing. And without this thing that we kind of transitioned to in the mid 90s when the FCC relaxed some regulations, and now you could have totally one-sided shows and programming. And I almost feel like they should have made the word news have to be lived up to instead of it being applied to even the channel. So, Fox could be a debate show channel, but not a news channel. They should not be allowed to use the word, and others too. Everything's not breaking news. I did say that before too. So yeah, who do you trust, or who should we trust? Do you guys have anybody in mind as far as that goes, as far as delivering information? Lisa, I'll start back with you.
As far as I can trust any entity, especially we're all human, so we all have some modicum of subjectivity that we're going to present on anything. But I lean to public radio, public television. NPR is like my absolute favorite. I probably have every station from here to Georgia programmed in my vehicle because I'm always going to NPR, because at a minimum they are often saying they're trying, and it appears that they're often trying to be unbiased, and they offer both perspectives more times than not that I see. So I lean to NPR, public radio and television.
I think that's a good choice. What about you, Bob?
Yeah, I think for the that sort of news, I completely agree. I do have confidence in NPR, and when I'm listening to NPR, and when I listen to their interviewing and that sort of thing, I feel like that they're being fair. They're being they're not doing it with a bias. They're doing it they're very probing, but they're not doing it with a bias, and I like that. I have more confidence in. I probably have the most confidence in New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, in the print. And it may be because in print, you don't get that sense of spin. You get the sense of data. And so,
and if it's not well written.
Yeah. And I guess if I were to look at consider mainstream, like, back in the day, to your point, Felton, we had ABC, NBC, and CBS. That's what we had. And smaller markets, there was just two. We had, and in Greensboro it was CBS, High Point it was ABC, and Winston-Salem it was NBC. And so, and it's interesting that we know from a marketing standpoint, if we give people too many choices, they paralyze, and so 3 is a good number. 3 is a very good number. It's gives you choice, but it doesn't. You can logically make choice. And yet, look at the toothpaste aisles in drugstores now, and how many choices of toothpaste you have. It's ridiculous. But I would say probably CBS would be the mainstream broadcast outside of NPR that I would probably pay most attention to. But I'll always cross-reference with print.
Yeah, I think print is important. And honestly, if I have to trust, the information comes as it comes, but I have to trust myself to be able to discern and decipher and to separate and question. And I think one of the things that technology has afforded us to some degree is the ability to do a great amount of research in a minimal amount of time. So if you have a question about something, if something's being reported, you can go find another source and another source and a source on top of that one. And if you get to that one that you trust more than the others, with Bob New York Times and CBS properties of some sort, then you'll be a NPR for you, Lisa. You'll be more likely to say, okay, if it's coming from there, I'll give it more credence. Might have a little bit more research to do, but I'll give more credence. So I guess trusting yourself to, be somewhat knowledgeable and who you should be respectful of the information coming from. If you can't go talk directly to the person, get the primary source information, then you got to make sure that other people have a consistent record.
And I think cross-referencing is valuable. If 3 people are giving you the same story the same way, three different outlets are giving you the same story the same way, or also in print, they do a better job of referencing the sources.
Yeah.
And so you can actually see where the survey came from. You can actually see where this data came from, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's all important.
Yeah, that gives, it lends itself to credibility, and credibility is the fact that you can say that this came from this place. And as you just stated, if it's written and if it's typed out, and you have to like, hold up, I can go check the source because he had to give it to you. That's what gives that paper credibility. But then you have personalities, which is another conversation. I'm gonna just drop that out there because I'm gonna play this clip. But what we used to witness with the Brokers and the Cronkites was this kind of stiff delivery. It was just like the facts, this happened, boom, that. But then, we get to this point again that I referenced earlier, when these FCC regulations are relaxed and you don't have to have both parties discussing something. So now you can get a character like Rush Limbaugh who just goes. And it's not even necessarily about what he's saying. It becomes more so about how he's saying it. And, oh, man, he's got words for days, and it's nonstop, and it's relentless, and it's picking at something that's, a few people have notion about, and then it's doesn't have to be factual after that. It can just be entertainment.
Well, the mission's viewers, it's not facts. The mission's viewers, it's not news. That's the whole shift. And there's nothing but disservice in that to the country.
Yeah, so I'll say this question, but it's kind of been answered by our conversation, because we are really getting to the point where the clip becomes apropos. So the other question, which is, we're not going to answer rhetorical at this point because I think we're in that realm of understanding it. But it's whether it's breaking news, the no spin zone, or your most trusted source, what's being sold versus what's being told. And that goes directly into what you're alluding to, Bob. It's a grab you factor as opposed to inform you factor, and make sure that you know something that may cause you to think a little differently about how you should move in society today, or what your values should probably look like. I think we're missing stuff there. I'm going to play this clip. It speaks to a couple of things that we can further unpack on the other side of it. And one of them is that role of corporate entities in ownership of the ways that information is disseminated. So this is an old clip from 1986, I believe, WFNY News. So it's dual purpose for me. The news is going to be shown. It's going to be about a local thing, but this local thing is a radio station that's being closed down. And I remember that radio station. I was only 10 years old. I remember that radio station. So I'll play this clip and we'll unpack a little bit further on the other side. And here we go.
TV. And now, the Piedmont's top-rated newscast, News 2 Tonight with Bill Copal, meteorologist Randy Jackson, and Mark Concannon, sports. Good evening. We've seen it happen before. One by one, newspapers across the country and part of the Triad have folded. Tonight, the obituary is being written for a landmark radio station in Greensboro. WBIG radio went off the air earlier this evening. Bill Logan was there when the station shut down. Bill, I guess it's all just starting to sink in, and the questions are arising now. What happened? Why?
It all boils down to money. And late this afternoon, station employees were told that Jefferson Pilot Communications, WBIG's parent company, was going to pull the plug. Nobody wanted to shut a station off after over 60 years of service to a community. That's just what happened.
We felt that it was unfair to keep asking our employees to go out and fight a battle day in and day out without the technical tools to win, and that's really what it came down to. We have a severely restricted signal, and that is a severe technical handicap in this marketplace at this time.
Believe me, we did explore every alternative that we could think of and that we could get other people to think of, and nothing really seemed to work.
Greensboro's first radio station began on the top floor of the Jefferson Building in April 1926. Soon, WBIG increased its power from 10 watts and moved into studios at the O. Henry Hotel. From that location, and later from the new studios on Battleground Avenue, listeners heard the daily dialogue between Bob Poole and his sidekick Willie. They became a Greensboro morning institution. James Light, the nightlight, kept things going in the evening hours, as AM 1470 became, as the station logo suggested, someplace special. More recently, a new crop of announcers kept listeners informed and entertained. This summer during the drought, a rain day was held, complete with rain songs and rain dances.
It worked! It worked!
Today, the mood, for obvious reasons, was more subdued. For these people, it was more than a radio station being signed off. It was the death of a friend.
BIG was the third oldest radio station in North Carolina, 60 years. There's not many of them out there that can brag about 60 years of service to their community. So yes, indeed, when 6 o'clock came tonight, they did lose a friend.
It wasn't entirely a surprise, but then again it was. It's just a shame that a station with this, I guess you would say, all the memories and the people it's served, it's just a shame that, it's leaving the air. That's the sad part.
One of my favorites, Johnny Rivers, on 1470 WBIG, the tracks of my tears.
Dusty Dunn handled the final airship, taking calls from bewildered listeners and playing sentimental songs. At 6, he turned the mic over to Lloyd Gordon for the final words.
Hello, this is Lloyd Gordon. I faced this microphone with great difficulty. In a few moments, WBIG Radio will sign off the air permanently. Over the next few days, you will no doubt read and hear about the factors which necessitated this action. I speak for the entire staff in saying that we leave you with great personal sadness, with tremendous pride in WBIG's 60 years of service to Greensboro, and with deep appreciation for your support as a listener. It's 6 o'clock, remaining always in our hearts someplace special. This is WBIG Greensboro.
The scene over at the studios tonight resembled something of a wake, and I'm sure the mourning will continue for some time. But life is going to go on for the WBIG employees. Some will be offered jobs at other Jefferson Pilot stations, and the company insists it will do all it can to make sure the others find work quickly. Bill, as a matter of fact, a couple of them said, your job looks awful attractive tonight.
Probably Dusty Duck. We wish them all the very best of luck.
Sure do.
Thank you very much, Bill.
So yeah, I thought that clip served a couple of purposes in what I, again, was trying to communicate about. For one, how much attention was paid at a period of time. That was like a almost 5 minute news story about something happening here. Now, it was significant. It was a local radio station that had been around forever. It was very significant, but they spent a lot of time on it. And they didn't interrupt to tell us about the weather. My gosh, how much do we need to know about the weather every 3 minutes? Goodness gracious. So, yeah, it was a delivered story. It talked about corporatism to a degree and the lack of ability to pay the people to keep providing a service. As that guy said, that was, an intricate part of the community. I'm paraphrasing, but it's very important to the community. I worked at radio station, it's been over, I don't even remember, 2000 something, when I was at UNCG. And I remember when the Clear Channel came in and we got just inundated with all of these talk shows. So it had to be around 2009 or 2010 because it was a response by certain corporate interests to the election of Barack Obama. They decided to make sure they spread some various talk shows, including Rush Limbaugh's network and all of the things that were played on these news channels, these local news channels that I think still remain. I don't listen to the radio as much as I used to, but it became all of this conservative dialogue. I say conservative in quotes because I don't know if some aspects of it are conservative, but it was a lot of that going on. A lot of that replaced local radio station. I think it was KISS that we used to have around here, whatever it was. But yeah, I remember that. I remember those DJs losing their jobs. Local people that could be your neighbor who were on the radio were replaced by nationally syndicated programming. So yeah, that's something to be thought about in terms of this way that we're being communicated to versus what's actually happening in proximity to us. So that was, again, the whole point of this. And I thought that clip did kind of resonate with what I was trying to talk about in this space. So if you want to comment on the clip, please do if you have any thoughts around it. But my question is being informed as important as it used to be? And I won't really think about that because I think I can ask that question, honestly. Is being informed as important as it used to be? Bob, I'll start with you this time.
One thing that fits into this whole thing too, I think, is back in 1986 and the lifespan of WBIG. WBIG was largely my parents' radio station. WCOG was the younger population's radio station. But in those eras, everything was on a schedule. So at this time of the day, it was this. This time of the day was this. This time of the day was this. And we moved so comprehensively to everything being on demand. And so everything's streaming, everything's on demand. And so I think that also disrupts this sense of I go here this time of day for this and do this time of day for that and do this time of day for that. And rather than that, we go seeking what it is that we're interested in. And so it's not about being informed so much. It's about pursuing the stuff that we're interested in. And even things like Spotify and Pandora and social media, they're the algorithms that feed you either music that other people who like your music listen to, or feed you music with the same DNA as the music you're listening to. So you just put it on kind of on autopilot. And so now you're just getting fed this stuff. I don't know the last time I listened to a radio station. I don't know that, except NPR. I mean, I don't know the last time I listened to a radio station. And so and And is it different with news? I'm more intentional, and I get feeds, and so I get, you know, this pop from this source and this pop from this source, and so forth and so forth. But it's not like I've got this chunk. My grandfather at 6 o'clock, and when I was growing up, if everybody in the house didn't shut up so he could listen intently to the news every evening, that's what he did, and everybody was expected to comply with that, because that was his time of day where he very intentionally was informed. So I don't think it is as important. I think we are actually as overwhelmed, as inundated as we are. We pick our causes that we're interested in, but otherwise we kind of let the world be the world out there, and we express outrage, and we express sympathy, and we express shock and awe and whatnot. But I don't know. It's a real different sense. I'll just say it that way.
Yeah. So you actually, I was, you know, grinning because I'm like, oh man, you're jumping ahead to the next part of the things, but you're either going to repeat yourself or you're going to have more to say about it. So keep thinking in the realm that you're thinking, because when I get to the last question, or what probably will be the last question, yeah, you're headed all into that direction, and yeah, unpacking some really good thoughts around it. I kind of think of it as a merry-go-round. When we were kids, we would spin the merry-go-round and spin it and spin it and spin it. Now, some people don't know what a merry-go-round is, but a merry-go-round was this old metal steel contraption that was highly dangerous, that young people today will miss out on cuts and bruises and things that make you tougher. But you spun it and you spun it, and then you tried to jump on it as it was spinning at the highest speed that you tried to jump on it, and if you made it, great. If you didn't, then you might end up under the thing. But you got up and tried again. So yeah, there's a constant flow of information, just a ridiculous flow of information. Yeah, Bob, the TV used to cut off. And, you know, we talked about that in the space before. It was midnight, 1 o'clock, maybe. You got the national anthem and it's shut down. But we have constant, now it's right in the palm of our hands. We just reach across the nightstand. Sometimes it's in the bed with you, and it's right there, and it lights up, and it tells you something. So before I get to that question that I'm starting to blur the line into, and you probably going to get there too, Lisa. Is being informed as important as it used to be?
I second Bob's emotion. No. So let's go to the next question. I'm excited about the next question.
So this, and it's going to come right back to that in some way. So I'll start with you with this, Lisa. Is the internet and or algorithms helpful or hurtful in terms of our informativeness? Now, I say, after some thought, it could be helpful. But what's the potential for helpful in this as an indicator? In my opinion, it's going to be based on certain ideals, certain moralistic leanings, certain things that you hold in a regard that will potentially, and this may be the long game of all of this stuff, I don't know. I think, what was that movie? It was Tom Cruise and the being able to predict whether you're gonna commit a crime or not. I can't think of the movie right now. I think it came up the other week. But bottom line, if you have integrity, moral leanings towards something that commits you to valuing yourself and valuing society, I think that may come across in the algorithm. It may come across in the internet way that you explore things. So the information that you may get could be valuable, and it could make you a better informed person. It could possibly even make you a more decent human being. I don't know. I just kind of was thinking about that. And my immediate reaction was to be like, nah, that algorithm stuff, all of that stuff's bad. It's just making us less informed because it's skewing your viewpoint towards something just because you clicked on this 2 or 3 times. Now I think she wants more of that. So I'm still saying it's not the greatest thing, but I am saying if you're a constant seeker of knowledge, if you're a person who has some humility, if you're a person who values your fellow man, what you search for may lead you to searching for the things that magnify that as opposed to condemn that. Now, if I say that part is potentially true, then the opposite is definitely true. You are somebody who's miserable and wants to find a reason to hate. You're not going to take long before you find everything you need to confirm those ideas. So I think ideals and what's in here can, by some measure, find its way into that algorithmic internet space and potentially better inform us. Now, I answered the question first, so you get the question now. And since you want to have so much fun with it, I'm interested in if I changed any of that dynamic and narrative to how you may have been getting ready to answer it, Lisa. So is the internet and or algorithms helpful or hurtful in terms of our informativeness?
So, at a macro level, I believe it is very helpful. Um, I think they're confused by me, where I can listen to Luke Bryan, Dolly Parton, Alabama, and DMX and CC Winans, and it's like, what is this woman about? Um, so the helpful part is that yes, you get to what means most to you faster. And I've seen that. I've watched it, conform to my leanings. Um, at a micro level, to your point, it does tend to continue to skew you towards your ideals already. So it shuts down your ability to be open minded to perhaps seeing a different perspective. So I literally do have to hunt a lot more for extreme ideals that are different than mine, because it takes a while to get to those extreme ideals, because I'm about not just consuming my own perspectives, but I want to understand or try to get some insight into the others' thought processes too. Um, and I'm comfortable doing that because I'm a human interest person. I'm a sociologist. Like, I'm about observing the society, and I don't believe I'm able to be skewed as easily, right? So I'm not afraid to take some of that in. But at the micro level, I think it is dangerous, because you do constantly get fed what your general ideal was, and it's going to snowball. So, and how many of us are open-minded or able to keep the meat and throw away the bones? How many people are really like that? Most people are not. And and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think most people get as deep into the weeds as we will get deep into the weeds. So we have the extreme behaviors that are being so destructive that it's just ripping so many other systems apart for a modicum of respectability. Is the best that I can say that.
Yeah, I think any endeavor or journey into becoming informed also requires some balance. So if you don't have a social presence, if you're not able to socialize and get that, what you're saying you have to seek, Lisa, should come naturally through, or you should at least get some exposure naturally through being a social person. But if you're somebody who sits at home all the time and your only access is to communicate with somebody via a device, somebody you may never meet, somebody who's just a picture on a screen, whatever, yeah, that can definitely skew you, and that's a rabbit hole that I stay far away from, way far away from. But yeah, I'm with you, Lisa. Your devices get to know you. You mentioned music. That's one of the ways that you get the heavy exposure to the algorithm, because you play 5 or 6 songs, and next thing you know, and you hearing a song you haven't heard in a while, and it's like, ooh, this is very nice. I can dig this. So yeah, that there's a balance in this imbalance we're participating in. So Bob, give us your bits and morsels and pieces that I kind of change your mind a little bit about how you were feeling, or the algorithms still come across as a terrible thing.
So the algorithm thing really worries me. It really worries me. And let me articulate three different things. If I Google something, then I get to all this list of stuff to choose from, and I'll choose sources of information that I trust. So I don't feel like I'm being manipulated in that sense, because I get to pick. I get the page after page of links and whatnot. I get to go through, and I can choose, and I see which are ads, I see which are actual sources of information, and I can choose the sources that I have confidence in, or that I have faith in, and that sort of thing. So there, I feel like it's really helpful, because I've got access to stuff, and I can sort through it, and I can look for reliable sources. On the music front, let me just give you this example. A depressed person listening to depressive music is going to be fed nothing but depressing music. A joyful person that listens to nothing but joyful music is going to be fed joyful music. So, but the depressed person needs to be fed joyful music. I mean, otherwise they're just being further depressed. So how helpful is that? Or the teenager that can't sleep at night because of something that happened at school. They reach over and get their phone at 2 o'clock in the morning. There's social media, and they're getting fed all this stuff that can not get them out of their worry, because they're worried. So it's going to feed into their worry. It's going to feed into and make their worry greater, and so forth. And I think that's terrifying. I think that's terrifying. So because social media is all about getting your attention, it's not about helping you. It's not about educating you. It's not about giving you a balanced view of things. It's not about enlightenment. It's about getting your attention and keeping that attention. It's all about attention share. And so I think that's terrifying.
Yeah, I want to say discussion I've had in the last 2 or 3 months was in regards to the lack of understanding where we're going as far as technology is taking us. And it's not possible to, right? It's just not. But we do know that there's generally always a profit motive behind how it's being steered at some point. Now, as someone who thought, when I was exposed to Facebook, didn't really want to be exposed to it. When I was exposed to Twitter, didn't really want to be exposed to it. Have barely a presence on Instagram is not my bag, and I haven't made it anywhere near TikTok or any of that stuff. But what I'm getting at, especially in Twitter land, there are moments that I think edification is possible. There are moments that I think being better informed there than the news that we're speaking, whether it's local or nationally, is possible. But that level of vulnerability that I think you're speaking to, Bob, in terms of when somebody decides to pull the strings one way or the other, or you get caught up in that stream of stuff that's speaking to your anger and your frustration with whatever is taking place in society or in your household. When you find that Twitter person that has that comment and observation that's generally just what you need, and then you find that other one that's just what you don't need, but it's still worth seeing. How does the algorithm recognize that? Because there's something over here that you might like, and it might be something decent and speak to those things I mentioned earlier in terms of the decent person you are. But this other thing is entertainment because this guy likes to slap people or whatever. So, okay, you like to watch people getting slapped. Then maybe we need to put this thing on here where people get hit with baseball bats. It's who's pulling the strings and who's making some money from the string pulling. But man, you guys know how to make special things happen with your thoughts and minds with things that cross my mind, and we unpack them here because I was unsure how I was going to communicate this one. But when I say news, I do mean just whatever's informing you. So this is about media more so, but yeah, we need to get some more information from where we are and where we stand, and where we are when we walk out our front doors. We need to know more about things here, and it should not be just on social media. It should come via our local news broadcast, and it should be at some points front page news. And it should be when it should interrupt the daytime soap operas or, oh gosh, I was going to talk about The View, shows like that are, oh my gosh, this stuff is just out of hand, right? And they're reporting news in a way, but it's so opinion based. What are we doing? Ugh. So anyway, yeah, but we need to interrupt some of those programs and talk about things going on in our backyard and say, hey, this is a person you might need to go talk to and get to know. Hey, these business people are having a meeting with this city representative, and we're going to make sure we show it in totality, and we'll be on hand for the follow-up, and whatever happens after they're done talking, we'll have a couple of questions for them. We need to be more active locally, and the news needs to reflect that that level of activity that's for the betterment of us, for the community. I want to leave that there. Greatly appreciate it. If you guys have any last words, feel free, or you can just say goodbye and good night and all that good stuff. Great sharing the time. Lisa, Bob, have a good night. Danya, appreciate you, man. Good work as always. We're signing off as they used to do. Don't hang around for the national anthem because